We are now joined via Teams by University of Johannesburg international law expert, Professor Hennie Strydom. Prof. Hennie, good afternoon, and thank you for your time on the SABC at this hour.
Yeah, good afternoon to you too and to the viewers.
Prof, the symposium is obviously happening at the University of KwaZulu Natal. The issue of the ICJ case obviously coming to the fore. Perhaps you could give us, from your vantage point, the key takeaways from Friday's ruling and whether South Africa was justified in bringing the Israel-Hamas case to the ICJ.
Yeah, South Africa acted fully within its rights under the Genocide Convention, and it made use of a compulsory procedure that was created in that convention, stating that when there's a dispute between parties to the convention, that dispute on the application and interpretation of the convention, then the matter must be referred to the ICJ. And as a member of the Genocide Convention, South Africa had certain obligations in taking action to prevent genocide from happening. So legally, it acted within the confines of that procedure, and it was within its rights to do so. And we have now seen the outcome of the ruling of the court on that application, concentrating on the humanitarian aid issue, which South Africa applied for, that there should be an increase in this provision of humanitarian aid, and on the disproportionate killing of civilians, disproportionate destruction of civilian facilities, and so on. So that is where we are now. It is now in the hands of Israel to comply with that ruling.
Well, the question is whether Israel is going to comply. Some of the view that there was no direct ruling on whether it was a genocide or not, and therefore there's nothing in the court's ruling that requires Israel to halt, to halt it in any way. What are you observing from your vantage point on that front?
Yeah, two responses to that. It was not necessary for the court to make a finding on whether there was actual genocide committed. At this point in the proceedings, all that the court must do is to reach a conclusion to the effect that South Africa has made out a plausible case that it may happen if action is not taken. And secondly, it is now the ruling is binding in terms of the statute of the ICJ. So there's no issue about that Israel has to implement. And I just have to mention here, which is an important point, the viewers will recall that some time ago, Germany indicated that it's going to intervene on behalf of or in support of Israel during the merits phase of the case, which is still to happen. Post the ruling on the provisional measures, Germany has requested Israel to comply with the ruling. And I think other states have also realized now it's now a different ballgame since the court has handed down the ruling, and that other states will also have to now concentrate on addressing the issues that South Africa raised before the court.
Well, Prof, some are questioning whether this case reaffirmed a degree of accountability to international law and the relevance of the ICJ.
Indeed, I think for international law and its application in context of this kind and in situations of this kind has been confirmed and affirmed by the court. Also, in view of the fact that we had a number of other cases recently dealing with similar issues, and where the court has followed the same route in order to provide protection to civilians in conflict situations. And I think the role of the court seems to be expanding on issues of this kind, also because that other mechanisms on international law turned out to be ineffective, and that parties are now turning to the ICJ, and in terms of its powers under the statute of the court.
Does this two-state solution do we edge closer to that at this point, given the ruling? But also, as we look at the pressure that the US now faces, from your vantage point, what are you observing on that front? We know that they were cracking on their patience with Benjamin Netanyahu's hardline politics It's also going to have some impact for them as they enter elections. So how do you think this is also coming to the fore in terms of the dynamics unfolding?
Yeah, that's an important question. At one point, it seems that the two-state solution was in danger of ever being implemented. There was strong reaction by Israel against it, while in the past it has confirmed that that is the solution that it is seeking. Hamas, we know, is not in favor of a two-state solution, but I think the rest of the Palestinian authorities are, and Palestinians maybe too in support of it. But since the ruling has been handed down, we have seen quite a number of responses referring to the two-state solution as the only solution, and has confirmed their support for it. I think the matter will probably be fleshed out once we have a permanent or a semi-permanent ceasefire, and discussions start to develop on the post-conflict arrangement for Gaza. But at this point in time, I think it's still anybody's guess what will happen to this two-state solution.
The worry about the conflict spilling over and becoming a regional conflict also raises some concerns. And what are you observing on that front, given the US drone attack and also some of the other dynamics unfolding in the Red Sea alone?
It has already started to expand, crossing borders and coming from Yemen and from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the attacks on ships in the Red Sea. So, and just before the ICJ handed down its ruling, there was many international leaders saying that it must be prevented at all costs. And I think it has somewhat died down after the ruling was handed down, but I think it is still a threat, and it is a threat to the region. And all concerned, I think, should do their utmost best to prevent that from escalating even further.
Prof, any closer to home, looking at the implications for South Africa? Earlier on, we spoke to our reporter, Kalihle Khumalo, and we were exploring how some of South Africa's trading partners were not in support of South Africa's decision to go to the ICJ with the Israel case. And what do you think that's also going to, how that's going to impact us as we edge closer to elections ourselves?
Yeah, it's difficult to speculate on that. I don't think it will have any direct implications for the elections. It may sort of, convince some people to stand with their political choices, and some may be swayed in that different directions. But I don't think we can expect any substantive influence. I think the influence will more be on interrelations between South Africa and other role players in this conflict. It must be noted that in terms of the BRICS partners, only Brazil, if I remember correctly, was in support of South Africa's action. And there seems to be little appetite at the time amongst the other BRICS partners to support the case actively and to bring out clear statements concerning their support for South Africa. I think the divisions on this conflict, which has been there for many, many years, will remain. And they will probably also either become softer in due course or become even worse, depending on what will happen in the next couple of weeks or months with the conflict in Gaza.